If you've seen my videos before, you'll know that a Newell has hundreds of air fittings on them to run anything from the slides, the airbags, the doors, etc. So today I'm going to walk through a detailed walk around on all the different areas that you need to check for leaks. So stick around, you're in for a surprise. Welcome to RV Squared, I'm Steve Vance. Today I've got an issue with air leaks, and as I've said, Newells have hundreds of fittings. These fittings, unfortunately, a lot are pushed to connect on a swivel, and we're in Montana right now and the temperatures have been dipping down in the low 40s. We just got back from the Sierras, in which the temperatures were down to the 30s, and there's one thing that these fittings do not like, and that's cold. Because you've got the tubing that shrinks, you've got the seals that get dried out and they shrink, and you're just in for a world of problems. And if you haven't contacted me already, I'm a big advocate of switching over to compression style DOT fittings. These are for high pressure airlines, brake systems, etc. These deal with a compression ferrule on the end, not push to connect. They're still very easy to put on. They have an internal ferrule that goes into the tube to stabilize it, and then a brass ferrule that goes over the end of the nylon tubing, and then the compression goes down and creates a very, very secure seal. Now these are not swivels, so that takes away one extra point of failure. Unfortunately, there are certain situations in which you can't actually get this 90-degree to turn. You're relegated to either putting on an extension to get past the obstruction, which I don't like another fitting, but that's one way to do it, or just use a swivel in that particular scenario. I have that scenario right now on my brake dryer, in which I'm going to have to use a swivel as kind of a temporary until I figure out if I can extend it out with a short nipple to get past the obstruction. But at any rate, these are the way to go. I buy these from McMaster car. They're fantastic. They ship almost immediately. And I keep a nice little set in a nice little divider. And this is kind of almost like a one of everything. And if I use something, I kind of make a note of what I have to replace. All right, so let's get down to it. I'm going to walk you around some preparatory things to begin with. Open up your bays, open up your door, because what we're going to do is we're going to kill all power on the coach. And why I do this is because there's some residual electronics that do create some interference, and it's not necessarily going to hit the frequency range of an air leak, but what happens is you'll hear some chatter going on in the background sometimes when you turn the gain up, and you'll hear chirping sometimes, and it's just kind of a bit of an interference when you're using these earphones. When you're not using the earphones, I don't really find it distracting to see the static, because I turn the gain down enough, and when you hit an air leak, you'll definitely see it pop up, and you're not going to hear the static if you don't have the headphones on. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, this is the AmProbe ULD 405. I'll put a link down below. It's an indispensable device for finding air leaks. I have found numerous ones with this in which I would not be able to hear them or otherwise. Now, for the old school people, myself included, soap and bubbles works perfectly fine. But look, the point of the matter is this is fast. I don't have to spray down anything. I don't have to get water everywhere. And when you're in sensitive electronic bays, or even in the bays for the slide manifolds, I don't really want to spray a bunch of soap products down on the carpets and just get a mess. So this is a really good, clean way to do it. Can you use soap and water? Yes, you can. You can use it as a backup if you want. And certainly the people who go underneath the coach and they just want to hit it really quickly with a pressure gun with a soap solution, you can do that too. But this is a really clean way to do it. Yeah, it comes with a price tag. I don't know the last check on these, but I think they're a little south of $500 now. But at any rate, it's one of those tools that once you need it, you're going to be glad you carry it. So let's walk around. I'm going to show you where to disconnect the power, or I should say the process in which I disconnect and kill all the power. So let's go through that right now. Once again, this is a 2015, and my battery and inverter system may differ from yours, but the principle is the same. This is my master house kill, and these are my inverter breakers. And I'll flip the inverter breakers over, and then I'll kill my house power. Back here is my chassis rotary switch. I kill that. Real simple, easy. So that's basically 2 rotaries and the 2 breakers for me. The newer model Newells have a main battery and house disconnect in their shoreline compartment in the back. That's going to eliminate all the electronic interference. Let's talk about the sources. You can go front to rear, rear to front, inside out, outside in, but I kind of go for the high suspect areas first. And I want to show you, first of all, keep in mind these 120 air compressors are going to be turned off. But I'd like to point out a couple things. When you test these fittings, which you definitely want to do, the compressor must be on. These are only going to tell you they're leaking when the compressor's on, which puts pressure into the exhaust manifold of the air compressor. You'll test this fitting, this fitting, this fitting, and you'll also test the dryer here. And a little extra credit here, you notice it's dripping a little bit. You want to dry that out occasionally. You want to drain it. Not a lot of water will drip out, but you'll see a little bit. Again, it will not drip out unless this is going on under pressure. You'll notice the gauge is down. Again, you have to test these under pressure, and I cycle one side and the other side, and I'll test these fittings when the compressors are running. All right, your 6-pack for your leveling system is here. You're going to want to sniff all these. You're going to check your air door valve and all of its associated fittings down here. Now I'm going to walk you around, and we're just going to hit all these points of potential failures, and then we'll go ahead and I will start sniffing them as needed. The next point I'll check is I will check all around in here for the slides and vacuum system. Many points of failure there. For the air doors and such, you'll come in here and you'll sniff this in here as well. One thing you'll want to check to make sure is, as you're doing this, you have to make sure that you keep air pressure. If your system's leaking that badly, you're going to lose air pressure, and there's no sense in testing with a system that's basically flat. So you have to keep a monitor on that. And in this case, you can see that pressure gauge is getting a little low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause, and I'm going to make sure that my auxiliary tank, and that's the one you have to monitor, because all the slides, the doors, even the leveling system are all supplied by the auxiliary air tank, which is located under the coach. And if it gets too low in pressure, you're not going to be able to detect any air leak. So I'm going to go ahead and get that filled up, and then we'll get back to it. And by the way, when I talk about bringing the house back online, all you have to do is rotate this switch. You notice my inverters are still off. Why do I have power? My inverters are off? It's because I'm on shoreline. So you'll notice that my spider panels are still lit, and you'll notice I've put on my 120 volt air compressor. Now with that air compressor running, I'm going to show you the display on a fairly low gain setting. If I run the gain up a little bit, you can see it fluctuating on the bottom. That's not an air leak. That's just basically the air rushing through the system. It's really hard to identify that. If you want, you can use the probe, which is this tube, and you can use this tube to put right on the actual fitting. So let me show you what that looks like. Our auxiliary tank is back inflated. Let's get back to it. Now what I do is I set my gain as high as I can in an open area, and I just make sure that I'm getting an actual readout. You can move your fingers out in front of it if you'd like to. That always works if you want to do that. If I'm starting to get false readings constantly, I'll just go ahead and lower the gain. So I'm getting a bit of a reading in here. Let me just double check. Make sure I didn't miss any fittings over here, which I know there are not. I'm getting a significant reading here. You see how that's going up to 99? So once I'm on that, I'm going to lower the sensitivity down. I'm still getting a strong reading right in here. This parabolic dish just will kind of eliminate or reduce the amount of surround noise that comes in here. I don't think it's really super necessary. I don't use it much, but I just want to use it for demonstration. So I'm getting a reading here. I'm going to switch over to my headset really quickly. My compressor, I'm going to leave on because I think I'm onto something here. It's already cycled back on again. I'm getting a leak in here. I can hear it. And I'm going to set this probe right on the actual air fittings. And I'm going to try to show you the display. I'm getting a lot of sound here. I'm going to lower the volume. This is so sensitive that that port right there is not leaking. Boom, right there. Can you see it? Now I'm going to show you, I am going to lower this down to the lowest sensitivity. Okay, the gain is all the way down on the amp probe. Okay, it's spiking the meter right on that swivel. Again, another swivel fitting, another push to connect. So this one's bad. Let me go find a replacement fitting for that. Okay, looks like this is going to be the fitting to replace. And that's probably the culprit of losing all my air. I'm going to get to that right after this video. Let's continue walking around. I'm going to take the tube off, put the dish back on. Let's keep walking around and I'm going to show you the other places. I always try to get a sniff on these airbags, and there are plenty of points of failure under here. It is best if the coach is raised up all the way. You've got auxiliary tanks down there, brake tanks are down there, but remember those are going to be charged as you're driving through your engine's air compressor. I'm going to turn the gain up and I'm just going to sweep back and forth, and believe me, if there's an air leak under your coach, this amp probe is going to find it. All right. In the back, you've got your leveling manifold. Again, you've got one in the front, one in the rear. Let's give that a good sniff. Let's give all your tank isolation valves a sniff. I replaced this whole system right here not too long ago. You notice those are all solid compression fittings. That's all good. The solenoids are all good here. Okay, let's sweep over that leveling manifold one more time. And here's the hose reel with the doubler. If you leave this on, you're going to have leaks. That doubler in here is just notoriously leaky. Whether it leaks upon a sniff or not, I can't really say. But one thing for sure is I've had this thing constantly work. I can hear it clicking every now and again. So I leave this off. Speaking of hose reel, let's give that a sniff. Don't forget your fittings on the back side. You can charge that system obviously if you want, but it's got residual air in there, no problem. Also, you've got your air compressor line that goes onto your engine. That is going to be not charged if the engine's not running. So you might have to test that when the engine's running. Walk around here. I apologize, but I am going to just let you know, you'll have to raise the coach. And I'm not going to raise the coach because the coach is leveled. It's squat down a little bit. And the point of the matter is I have a leak back there. The leak is actually on the air dryer manifold. And there's a block under there with several swivel fittings once again, and I'm going to have to get this coach raised up. I've got extra fittings coming in tomorrow and I'm going to get after those. Bottom line is there's an air dryer back here. You'll see it on your coach. It may be moved around a little bit, but the point of the matter is give that a good sniff back here. Give your airbags a sniff back here, and I can crawl under here and I can see my tanks under there. Now, way up high under our coach, there's actually a second auxiliary tank that's hidden above the transaxle. And this little dude is really hard to get to, but it supplies the rear air chuck that, in our case, supplies our Air Force One auxiliary braking system, or some people would use it for their stacker. But it's really hard to get to, and this has dozens of fittings up there. So we replaced them all. Now, in addition to the fittings, we also replaced check valves, because what happens with the check valves is it's really hard to detect leaks with them with the amp probe, because the check valve, if it's malfunctioning, will actually leach air backwards and start to fill your air tanks for your front and rear air brakes. And the way you can test that is if you drop your air tanks for your brakes all the way down to zero or close to zero, and then you have your auxiliary tanks filled up to 100, 110, just let it sit for a while and you'll actually see that front and rear air tank start to gain pressure, drawing it down from your auxiliary tanks. And this is a sign that your check valves are leaking. So we replaced not one, not two, but all three of the check valves just to be on the safe side. So I'd encourage you that once you're under there, you might as well get all three of them at the same time. And they're actually attached to the air fittings anyway. So it's a good time to replace them. You should be checking the slide seals too. The slide seals are really hard to check, but I kind of do it in stages. What I'll do is I'll sweep around the outside, and because I'm holding the probe up away from me, I'll use the headset and I'll go around the surround as far as I can on the outside, and then I'll do it on the inside. Now, I suppose that you could have a leak on the inside and not detect it from the outside, because you know the seal's bulb I think would insulate sound enough. I haven't tested this, but I speculate there are situations where you may not detect it. But if you isolate your slides on the manifold down below, that would kind of indicate if you stop the leaking by blocking off your manifold down below, then you could kind of guess that you've got a slide leak, and then you have individual isolation valves that you can turn off and kind of by process of elimination find out which slide seal is leaking. But just for peace of mind and just for drill, I go ahead and sniff the seals anyway. So I'll use this, I'll turn the sensitivity up, I'll put the parabolic dish on, and then I'm just going to do a sweep around and basically hope I find nothing. Let's sniff the slides. I'm going to turn my slide back on. This valve is leaking. Not much I can do about that. Right there, see? Leaking like crazy. Sometimes if you wiggle this valve back and forth and you exercise it, okay, that was just enough to keep it quiet. Let's continue around. Keep in mind that these amp probes are designed for HVAC engineers as well. So you don't have to be right on top of the actual fitting. You can be quite a ways away. They're actually designed so you could point up to the ceiling, and with the earplugs in, you'll pick something up. All right, there's one more place that you may not be thinking about, and I kind of forget about it as well, and that's the generator compartment, because there are 4 little air pucks that the generator sits on, and those each are supplied with air, the coach's air. So let's get after that. All right, there are 4 air cushions that the generator sits on, and you can actually see how these things add shock absorption. Here's the coach air supply, and on this particular coach, it runs in from the compressor compartment. Let's go see if we can find that. See here? This is the line that comes into this manifold, and it goes into the generator compartment. And that in turn comes into a little regulator here, a T, and then branches off and goes to each one of the 4 air pucks. Now, I will say that the good news is some of these are actually compression fittings, but the other ones are the dreaded push to connect. So let's give them a test. Again, you want to make sure you've got air in here, which means this system's all pressurized. So let's give them a sniff. Now, since this is a pretty quiet cabinet, I'm going to turn my sensitivity up because I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time reaching to the back. Looks good. Let's see if we can sniff that back one a little bit. I'm going to turn that sensitivity down, picking up a little bit of interference back there. All right, let's check this one. That's good. And last but not least, let's see if I can get that. Tell you what, you would not want to be changing that fitting back there. Okay, I can get back there underneath the engine. It's just fine. Beautiful. I'm glad none of those leak. So we'll go ahead and close this cabinet up. That's all there is to the outside. The next part that we'll look at is we'll start with the inside. You've got your air door. If you want to take your cover off, I'd suggest doing that. There's several fittings in there for your air door. Air seat, okay? Your air seat as well as your valves under here. These all have a tendency to leak. So you just want to sniff down under there. Not only the raise and lower, but also the swivel release. Don't forget your air brake valves. Obviously part of the braking system, not necessarily your auxiliary tank, but just sniff those anyway while you're up here. Hold it underneath the dash. Your air pocket door releases, all right? Those are a plunger valve that will release your pocket door, in this case, for the bedroom. You'll have one on each side. Here's the secret compartment or the plunger for the bathroom. Our emergency release for the bathroom pocket door is in the closet back here, around the corner. And then I will get the probe and I will sniff the actual pocket door. So the air cylinder on the pocket doors is up in here. So I'll sniff up in there. Obviously, when the door is moving, you'll hear the air hissing. If you want, on the inside, since you're here, it would not hurt to give the seal a listen. You can go along the top, above the valance. Again, you don't have to worry about getting the probe or the actual nozzle up in there. It's sensitive enough, you know, as long as you got your gain turned up, you're going to detect that leak. Let's walk back outside and we'll give this a wrap, and I got work to do. There you go. Hand probe, DOD 405 for the win. I found one new air leak today. I got a valve on the slide shut off that needs looking at, and I can get by without replacing that for now. But if you don't have one of these, you can see how valuable they really are. That would have taken me so much longer with soap and bubbles, and quite frankly made a huge mess of things. And you can see the value of being able to sweep from a distance, or I should say listen from a distance. I want to thank you for watching. I hope this helps you. Be sure to like this video and give me comments below to help it rise to the top, at least of my channel anyway. I appreciate you stopping by. Subscribe if you want to see more. And above all, be safe, healthy, and have great travels. Thanks for watching.